What'd you think, Vernon?
I was super impressed with this bike. It was one of my favorite bikes of the Bible, in fact, of our entire time here. I thought it climbed exceptionally well in the middle trail mode on the shock. I had to look down a couple times, and so it climbed really well, but also it descended the techie sections really well, and I had to look down a couple times. In my mind, I was thinking this has to be the Range. They're all mountain bike. I was actually like, is this a site? Shit, because I've ridden the site before, and I wasn't all that impressed. But I thought they nailed it on this bike. I thought it was really well balanced. I thought it does. If a trail bike is supposed to be a bike that climbs and descends equally well, I thought this was it. I have remarkably little to say about this bike because I just flat out liked it.
That's echoing my sentiments. I mean, I felt it was really well balanced, climbed and descended well. It was awesome on the loop we had, and I mean, it's the kind of bike I gravitate towards. And it had a nice spec. Although it did cost a bit of money, doesn't it?
Now, $6,850 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those bikes that people are probably going to watch this and hate us for reviewing. And they're going to say, well, of course it should be good. It's that much money. But you can actually get this same frame with less expensive components starting at $3,545, which is crazy. That's, again, there's someone hating us for saying that's good. But no, that's a good price for a carbon frame with legitimate parts on it. So, if you can't buy this, you can get the same performance at almost half the price.
Yeah. Well, if people are going to hate us for talking about a really expensive bike, and they might hate me even more for saying that I think that it should have had a pike on it.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, it's a more expensive fork than the Revelation, but man, like, that bike is a capable bike.
Yeah.
And the
Crazy.
thing that was holding it back for me was that Revelation fork. Like, it's a good fork. It legitimately is a good fork, and it was the
RCT3.
RCT3.
Yeah.
It's the highest end Revelation. And it's good, but like, man, the Charger damper in that pike is so much better.
Yeah.
It's a game changer. Like, that fork came around, and it kind of made all other forks disappear in my head. And I felt like the site could have had that on there. I think it would have benefited from it for sure.
Yeah.
That would be my call as well.
I was thinking that myself. I was surprised at the Revelation because we've ridden some of the lower tier Revelations on other bikes like the Felt, and I wasn't impressed. I had to look down a couple times and see what I was riding because the Revelation on this bike was considerably better. But in terms of stoutness, I think, again, this is one of those cases where the back end is performing better than the front. But I didn't feel it was a massive mismatch. But, if you could put a pike on it, hell yeah.
That would be insane.
I just think that, like, that Revelation has really good bump sensitivity in like the initial travel. But if you're running like a reasonable amount of sag and you're utilizing all your travel, the fork is going to dive quite a bit when you get into the steeper stuff and when you're riding a little bit more aggressively.
Yeah.
And that's where the pike and that Charger damper really excel, is that you can run that fork so that it's super supple in the top end, but it's really incredibly supportive in the mid-stroke.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a game changer for me. And considering the fact that I think that this bike is so capable, I just feel like it would be even more capable with that fork on it. I think it'd be a nice upgrade.
It's a common refrain for this whole Bible of Bike test, though, isn't it? I mean, we keep coming back to this. It's kind of become a hobby horse for us.
Yeah, but it's a legitimate one, though.
Or just upgrading.
If you ride aggressive terrain, though, it's a legitimate one. I mean, it's one of those things, if you're pushing the bike hard, if you're going off drops, if you're going into G-outs, you feel the difference on longer travel bikes. You want a stouter fork. And it's one of those things that it's like, it sounds like a kind of a lame thing to complain about over and over again, but it's $1,000 upgrade. Yeah. And when you look at the sticker price on these bikes, the last thing you want to do is go out and blow another $1,000 on it, right?
Yeah.
When you've already spent $6,800.
Yeah.
Right.
And, honestly, for me, I don't think it comes down to stoutness or, like, stiffness of the fork, because I didn't feel like that Revelation was noodly at all. I feel like it was, I think it was fine.
You're talking about the mid-travel support.
I'm just talking about the actual suspension, the quality of the suspension. Like, if they had a Charger damper for the Revelation, which I imagine they'll probably have someday because it's so great, I would buy that fork. I would. It's not about the stiffness for me. It's more about the actual performance of the suspension.
Is there anything else that you didn't care about on the bike? We're saying the bike's really good. We haven't really talked about the component spec. Is there anything that you didn't dig on it?
No, I mean, the rest of the component spec was great. I think the stem was a bit long, but I think it, that's a personal preference thing.
It was like maybe 70
I think it was a 70.
Yeah.
It could have been a 50. I mean, I would normally run a 50.
It stood out just a tad.
But it didn't make me feel unbalanced on the bike. And, I had good control over, I mean, all in all, I thought it was a really good performing bike. And like you, I don't have a lot to say about it because I don't really have a lot of gripes on it. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a top 5 bike.
Yeah, me too. Top 5 for sure.
Yeah,
I know you're splitting hairs when you start going down to the grips. Oh, I didn't really like the grips.
Yeah, no, actually, I thought
that's true.
I thought
didn't
that
like the
myself,
grips,
and I was like, well, the grips, and then I'm thinking,
What
yeah,
kind
how?
of an asshole says, I don't really like the grip? Oh.
Right.
I guess I...
But it's because everything else is working so well on the bike. I had the
Exactly.
same thought. And I was like, God, I hate myself for thinking that. But everything else is working really well, right? One-by drivetrain, great brakes on it. I mean, the wheel, they didn't cheap out anywhere. And again, the price demands that they did not cheap out. But it was really impressive. I guess one thing that's worth noting is that, Norco's British Columbia company. And I think sometimes some of those companies up there get slagged as being, maybe only good on the North Shore. Obviously, our terrain is considerably different here.
Oh,
and
it's
the bike
totally different.
The bike was spot on. So, I mean, I think that's worth considering, too, for people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those cases where brevity is a compliment. We don't have a lot to say because the bike doesn't do really anything wrong. It does a lot right.
Yeah. It's a comfortable bike. Rides well. Does what it's supposed to do.
Agreed. Stop.